the girl disappeared on her way to school. At first, the police thought that she had run away from home, but soon very disturbing clues began to appear in this case. During the investigation, detectives encountered a series of shocking discoveries, thanks to which they were able to get to the bottom of the truth. Sierra Lamar was born on October 19, 1996 in the American city of Trimand, California. She was cheerful and cheerful, had many friends, and was especially close to her older sister. The girl loved to spend time with her schoolmates, danced, and was a member of the local cheerleading team. When Sierra was in high school, her parents moved on, and the girl ended up living with her father for a while. A few months later, in October 2011, she and her mother moved to a small town called Morgan Hill. Her mother began dating another man, and soon she and her daughter moved in with him. This event became a great test for Sierra. All her friends remained in Trimand, which was about 60 kilometers away, and she also had to transfer to a local school in the middle of the school year, where she knew absolutely no one. In addition, the girl was forced to live in the house of a man with whom her mother was dating, and who was essentially an old man to her. Sierra took the move hard, but still tried to maintain a positive attitude. She quickly got used to the new school, found several friends there, and gradually got used to life in the new city. The girl lived in a suburban area, and her school was several kilometers away. Every morning she had to get there by bus, because her mother left for work early in the morning and could not give her daughter a ride. On Friday, March 16, 2019, Sierra woke up around 6 a.m. as usual and began getting ready for school. Her mother came into her room. They talked a little, and the woman left for work. Closer to 7 o'clock in the morning, the girl was getting ready to leave the house. Before this, she took a photo and posted it on a social network, and also called a school friend. They agreed to meet before classes started to finish their homework together. Around this time, her mother sent her 2 messages. She reminded her that the girl should clean her room, and also asked if she was going to meet her friend. However, the girl never answered. The woman didn't pay much attention to this. She admitted that Sierra was busy getting ready for school, after which she went to class and forgot to answer. At 3:15 p.m., the woman left work and decided to call her daughter, but she did not answer the phone. This time the mother began to worry. By this time, the girl should have already returned home, and even before, Sierra always answered the calls. Over the next hour, the mother continued to try to call her, but she was unable to do so. The woman returned home around 5 o'clock and found that her daughter was not there. So she decided to call her school in hopes that Sierra might still be there. But when the school secretary checked the information, the woman was shocked by what she heard. It turned out that the girl missed all her lessons that day. The mother began to get seriously worried because Sierra had never skipped school before. She thought that the girl might have gone to Trimand to see her father or friends. The woman called her ex-husband and everyone her daughter knew, but none of them had seen Sierra. Moreover, her friends said that the girl had not contacted them since the morning, which was unusual. They constantly corresponded on social networks, but that day Sierra didn't even read their messages. After listening to all this, her mother began to panic and decided to contact the police. However, the operator was in no hurry to accept Sierra's missing report. Only a few hours had passed since her alleged disappearance, which did not indicate any possible danger to the girl. She was 15 at the time, and police believed she might be skipping school and spending time with friends. As a result, the operator advised her mother to wait a few more hours before filing a missing person report. The woman continued to call all possible acquaintances of Sierra, but none of them saw the girl that day. In the evening, the police finally came to her mother. Having learned that the girl never returned home, they nevertheless decided to take up this matter. After speaking with her mother, officers learned that Sierra was unhappy about moving from her old town, which she regularly told her friends and family about. For this reason, the police assumed that the girl could have run away from home. However, her mother categorically rejected this version. She insisted that Sierra would never have run away, and that she would simply have nowhere to go. But the girl's father didn't see her all day, and neither did all her friends. But the police continued to adhere to the escape version. Despite this, they decided to start searching, and the first thing they did was talk to all of Sierra's acquaintances. They told the investigator the same thing as her mother. None of them had seen or contacted the girl since early morning. At the same time, Sierra's close friends admitted that the girl was very upset about the move and wanted to go back. She even mentioned once that she was thinking about running away there. This only strengthened the police's opinion that the girl left home on her own initiative. Next, the police studied Sierra's social networks and requested data on her cellular activity from the operator. After 7 in the morning, the girl did not appear online and did not make any calls, and her phone was turned off. However, detectives were able to obtain some useful information. Thanks to a photo that the girl posted early in the morning, they learned what clothes she was going to wear to leave the house that day. This allowed them to make a more accurate orientation. The police also tried to track the location of her smartphone. Due to the fact that it was turned off, they only had access to cell tower data, which had an error of several kilometers. But even with this information, they were able to establish that the girl's phone was turned off very close to her house. However, within a few hours, detectives had a new lead. They continued to monitor her smartphone in the hope that it would be turned on, and at 3:45 am they suddenly received a signal. True, something strange was happening to the phone. It turned on for just a few seconds, after which it disappeared again, and this was repeated several times. This was enough to establish approximately the location. The phone was in a field located a kilometer from Sierra's house. The next morning, officers set out to search, but their work was complicated by the fact that it had been raining heavily throughout the night. Because of this, they assumed that the smartphone could be covered in dirt or in a puddle. However, a few hours later they still managed to find him. He was lying on the ground in that very field. It turned out that the phone's battery was completely discharged. At first, detectives did not understand how it could turn on in the middle of the night, but soon experts came to an unexpected conclusion. Because it rained heavily overnight, water got into the charging port, and the phone mistook it for attempts to charge it. As a result, it started to turn on, but due to the lack of a real power connection, it turned off again. After finding the smartphone, detectives were no longer so sure that she ran away from home of her own free will. It was difficult to imagine why the girl could have thrown it into the field, and besides, no other things of hers could be found near the place where the phone was found. Having studied the correspondence and call history, the police also did not find any confirmation of the escape version. In parallel, investigators tried to build a chronology of the events of that day. They looked for any surveillance cameras in the area, hoping to use them to learn about Sierra's movements. But failure awaited them here. The girl's house was located in a rather remote area, and there was not a single camera along the roads. However, the police found out that all school buses are equipped with cameras inside and outside the cabin. After reviewing the records for that day, they found that Sierra never got on that bus. Moreover, the girl was not at the stop itself. After that, they decided to look at all the recordings from the previous days. By this time, detectives already believed that Sierra might have been kidnapped. They hoped that the footage might have captured the alleged perpetrator who was stalking the girl, but failure awaited them here. When local residents learned about the possible abduction of the girl, several hundred volunteers contacted the police and wanted to help in the search. Investigators divided them into groups and sent them to comb the area within a radius of several kilometers from the field where Sierra's smartphone was found. The next day it bore fruit. About a kilometer from the place where the girl's phone was found, the search team found her backpack. It lay next to a farmer's barn located on the edge of a field. The backpack was covered with a bunch of cacti, making it almost impossible to notice from the outside. To the detective's surprise, inside the backpack they found all of Sierra's clothes that she was wearing on the day of her disappearance, including her soft underwear and even her socks. This disturbing discovery indicated that the girl may have been the victim of a kidnapping or may not be alive at all. There were also all of her school things and even the inhaler that Sierra always carried with her. All these items were transferred to the laboratory. Detectives hoped that the experts would be able to find some additional information. After the discovery of the backpack, the police intensified their search, expanding their area by several tens of kilometers. To cover such distances, they brought in helicopters with infrared cameras, as well as additional forces on the ground. At that moment, they managed to attract almost 600 volunteers. Detectives tried to use every possible resource to find Sierra. They used search dogs, got the FBI involved, and posted flyers all over the city about her disappearance. At the same time, detectives decided to begin searching for the possible kidnapper. They checked the list of registered and previously convicted rapists living within a radius of 8 kilometers from the girl's home. To their surprise, there were more than 250 such people on this list. The police had to form 20 groups that were supposed to interview each of them and establish their possible involvement. But an even more alarming fact was that Sierra's own father was also on this list. In 2009, he was arrested for harassing his daughter's friends while they were staying at their house for a sleepover. For this, he spent a year in prison, and it was his actions that became the reason why Sierra's mother divorced him. In addition, by a court decision, the girl was prohibited from staying with him after her parents' divorce. Detectives wondered whether he could have anything to do with his daughter's disappearance. However, the man provided them with an alibi, which turned out to be undeniable. Moreover, according to the results of the audit, all 250 previously convicted criminals also had reliable alibis. Meanwhile, the police received a new interesting tip. One of the experts who participated in the study of Sierra's things noticed on her clothes particles of a plant that grew only near bodies of water. In addition, particles of paint used for road markings were found on the clothes. Based on this, detectives assumed that an unknown criminal grabbed her near the bus stop and dragged her across the road into a nearby field. After that, he could take her to some kind of pond, kill and throw, land in the water. The police brought in search teams on boats and divers to comb all bodies of water within a radius of several kilometers. Meanwhile, experts continued to study Sierra's clothing and eventually had a breakthrough. Traces of male semen were found on her jeans, which contained the DNA of an unknown person. They began extracting a profile, which could take several weeks. Detectives did not sit still and wait for the results. They continued to search the area, try to identify new suspects, and generally made every effort to find Sierra. During this time, the total number of police officers and volunteers involved in this case reached 1,300 people. Despite this, they failed to make progress. But on March 28, everything changed. 12 days after the girl disappeared, experts were able to extract a DNA sample from the semen and immediately uploaded it to the FBI database. To the detective's surprise, they instantly got a match. The seed belonged to a 21-year-old man named Antalon Garcia Toros. After examining his criminal history, detectives were again surprised. It turned out that the man's DNA should not have ended up in the FBI database, but it was uploaded there due to some confusion. In 2009, when Toros was 18, he was arrested for having an intimate relationship with a minor. This girl soon married him, and during the trial, all charges against the man were dropped. However, until this point, the police still took a sample of his DNA and uploaded it into the system because they believed that he would go to prison. At the time of his disappearance from the Sierra, the man was living with his wife and their newborn child in a trailer park across town. Everything indicated that he might be involved in the kidnapping, but the police decided to proceed with caution. They assumed that Thoros could still be holding her in an unknown place. In this case, he can kill her as soon as he realizes that the detectives have found him. For this reason, the police set up secret 24-hour surveillance of him. They tracked his every move. Detectives also obtained warrant tracking of his phone. However, all this did not bring any results. It seemed that Thoros was living a completely ordinary life and not doing anything suspicious. Police even sent 2 undercover officers to the trailer park where the suspect lived. Under the guise of a married couple, they moved into a trailer across the street and tried to establish contact with him. Rather, they noticed something interesting. A surveillance camera was installed at the exit of the trailer park. This was the only road that could be used to get in and out of there. So detectives immediately asked management for records from March 16th. They knew the approximate time of Sierra's abduction and wanted to see if Thoros had left the house shortly before. But here they were disappointed. That Friday, Thoros actually left the trailer park in his car. Except this happened at 8 a.m. and Sierra disappeared at about 7:10. This way the man would not be physically able to kidnap her and the detectives would be left with nothing. But here came another surprising turn of events. Sometime after police received the recordings, a trailer park employee told them that the time on the camera was set incorrectly. It was an hour ahead because the employees were too lazy to go into the settings and change it. Thus, it turned out that Thoros left the house not at 8 o'clock in the morning, but at 7. This meant that he could well have kidnapped Sierra. Police checked the suspect's work schedule and learned that he had a day off that Friday. And here they found out one terrible fact. Over the past few years, Thoros has worked for a supermarket chain that has been linked to a series of unsolved crimes. 3 attempted kidnappings of women took place in the parking lots of the very stores where Thoros worked. They all followed the same scenario. When the store visitor returned to her car, an unknown man in a mask got into the back seat after her. Threatening with weapons, he tried to force the women to leave for some deserted place. However, in all 3 cases, the victims managed to escape from the car, and the perpetrator fled the scene. Police investigated the attacks, but were unable to identify the man. In only 1 of 3 cases did he leave evidence. After the criminal got into the woman's car, she managed to scare him off, and he ran away. However, before that, he dropped his stun gun, and experts found a partial fingerprint on the batteries. It wasn't enough to upload into the database, but now they could manually compare it to Thoros' fingerprint, and the analysis showed a complete coincidence. Thus, detectives linked him to 3 kidnapping attempts and became even more convinced that Thoros could be behind Sierra's disappearance. After that, they finally decided to talk to the man and headed to his home. During this conversation, he behaved very casually and did not show any anxiety. When police asked if he knew Sierra Lamar, the man replied, "I doubt it, so what?" and laughed. This answer seemed strange to the detectives, but thanks to it they actually caught Thoros in a lie. Based on all this, the police decided to arrest Thoros. On April 7, he was taken into custody and taken in for questioning. The man denied any wrongdoing and claimed that he had gone fishing that morning. Thoros allegedly spent about 6 hours there alone, after which he withdrew money from a nearby bank branch and returned home. At the same time, he behaved quite impudently, constantly mocking the detectives. When Thoros was once again asked if he knew Sierra Lamar, the man stated that he had seen flyers with information about her disappearance, but had never met her in person. Then the investigators asked him a leading question. Could his DNA somehow be involved in the disappearance of this girl? In response to this, Thoros told them a completely simple story. He admitted that he loved to drive cars and masturbate. During one of these trips, he did his dirty business, after which he threw a napkin with his seed out the window. And he did it exactly in the place where the police found Sierra's backpack. Detectives found this story completely implausible. However, here Thoros managed to let it slip twice. Firstly, the police did not specify that by DNA they meant his family. Secondly, they also didn't say that a sample of it was found on Sierra's things. And the fact that the suspect knew the exact place where her backpack was found could only say one thing: he hid it there himself. As a result, detectives were almost 100% convinced that Torres was behind Sierra's disappearance. However, they needed more evidence. Having received a search warrant for his house and car, another breakthrough awaited them. Experts found Sierra's DNA on the inside handle of the rear doors of his car. Pieces of fabric were found on her clothes that completely matched the upholstery of his seats. In addition, a rope with a woman's hair was found in Torres' trunk. DNA testing showed it belonged to Sierra Lamar. Despite this impressive array of evidence, detectives knew it would be difficult to secure a conviction. By this point, they were confident that Sierra was dead, but the location of her body was still unknown. They didn't even have the slightest idea where or how Torres killed her. All this could play into the hands of the suspect and his lawyer. But ultimately, investigators decided to take the case to court. Given the potential complexity of this case, preparations for the trial lasted almost 5 years. The first hearing took place only on January 30, 2017, and the prosecution stated that it intended to seek the death penalty. Torres' lawyers insisted there was not a single piece of evidence in the case that would point to Sierra's death. They tried to convince the jury that the girl either ran away from home or was abducted by someone else. As for the seed on Sierra's pants, the lawyers stuck with his napkin theory. At the same time, the napkin disappeared somewhere, since the police did not find it in the backpack itself or next to it. After the prosecution refuted all these arguments and presented the remaining evidence, the lawyers decided to change tactics. Now they pointed out that Torres had a difficult childhood, during which he himself became a victim of violence from his father. Thus, the lawyers tried to get the death penalty replaced with a more lenient punishment. But at the same time, Torres continued to insist on his innocence. The trial lasted more than 4 months, and on May 8, the jury returned its verdict. Torres was found guilty of Sierra's murder, as well as 3 attempts to kidnap women. However, the judge nevertheless decided to replace the death penalty with life imprisonment without the right to parole. Sierra's relatives were unhappy that her killer escaped the death penalty, but they still hope to find her body so they can give her a decent funeral. Throughout all these years, they continued their search, and dozens of volunteers helped them in this. Unfortunately, they have not been able to find her to this day. Torres repeatedly tried to appeal the verdict, but these attempts led nowhere. He continues to maintain his innocence, despite all the evidence against him.